With the announcement of another Total War Warhammer 2 DLC somewhat around the corner, I want to talk about some of the old world updates for some of the old world factions that we've yet to see get that Warhammer 2 kind of special treatment. This will be kind of a mini-series, about 4-part mini-series, in which case we'll be talking about Empire, Greenskins, Wood Elves, and the Beastmen. In this video here today, we'll be focusing on the Empire and some speculative, or I guess like a wish list, basically just kind of going through some issues and some problems that I think that a lot of us really see with the Empire campaign, and ways that they could make it a lot more flavorful as far as lore goes, as far as just general entertainment of the game goes, all sorts of things. So in this video today, I'm going to break things down. The general structure we're going to approach this is, we're going to talk about the court system, how I'd like to revamp that, the research tree, kind of go through something I call the quest system, or a new kind of quest style I think would be very fun for the Empire, and a nod to their overall arcing lore, and then go through some additional map changes, as well as some troops that will then play into those overall map changes and some of the other ideas I have in mind. But first off, let's just take a look at the Empire as a whole here. So we have all of in this map, we don't have all of the electoral provinces, as they're called, each one controlled by a elector count. You can see Reichland, Visenland, Averland, Stirland, Talbeckland, Ostermark, Ostland, Hochland, Nordland, Midland, and then Marienburg is over here. Of course, there is also the Moot, which is actually a electoral province that is not reflected in this game. We'll get to that later. So when we take a look at the Empire, we think of one thing that makes the Empire so big and strong and awesome, right? Are its offices. And its offices were a really cool feature in Total War Warhammer 1. They're a really great way to kind of add a lot of character to the Empire campaign. But as we've progressed through the entirety of Warhammer 1 and 2, we've seen this kind of become second rate. Like, by comparison to the Vampire Coast and their whole court system and their offices system, it's a shadow, right? So what I'd really like to do is see this overhauled entirely. When you take a look at the members of the State Council of the actual Empire in the book itself, you have a lot of different roles, and some of them are kind of pushed into these a little bit easier. Like, for instance, the position of power of the spiritual leader is Volkmar the Grim. Well, they chose Arch-Lector because Volkmar the Grim is truly the Arch-Lector. They kind of put a little lore blurb in here too. One of the two Arch-Lectors will often be at the Emperor's court, speaking with the Grand Theogonist's voice on all religious matters. But there are other additional positions of power. There's a Chancellor of the Reichland, there's a Counselor of Matters Magical, Chamberlain of the Seal, Military Advisor to the Emperor, which is Kurt Helborg, duh, and Balthazar Gelt is the Counselor of Matters of Magic, which you could again argue is the Patriarch. Then there also is the Chancellor of the Imperial Treasury, which is, again, I think that's just simply the Treasurer. There's Chamberlain of the Imperial House. And lastly, there is Supreme Law Lord. There is a Supreme Court in the Empire. And I think that would be an interesting thing to add onto this list. I don't think we need to see every single one of these positions of power. I think that Creative Assembly did a good job of just kind of, okay, the Castellan Engineer, you could really see that could be the, I don't know, Chamberlain of the Imperial House, or maybe Chamberlain of the Seal, however they really want to do it. But my point is that I think that they've tried to truncate that and make it a little bit easier for the layman to understand. Like, Chamberlain of the Seal, maybe I don't understand that that's actually a spy master, something like that. So I'm going to give Creative Assembly the benefit of the doubt that that's how they approach these titles and their names for the offices. But I think expanding on this would be a little bit better. When you look at the Vampire Coast, it's almost the same exact style, you know, 1 at the top for the Admiral of the Fleet, but then it branches out to 4 in that second tier, and I think it's 5 or 6 in that very bottom tier. So Vampire Coast has more options for officers than the Empire does, which is kind of funny, right? It's kind of weird. So my thoughts behind this are a little expansive, and again, this is conjecture. This is me completely just making shit up for the most part. But I want to talk about this and kind of get your brain stewing on it, because I think some of it would be fun. I think some of it has some weight to it. But judges were, again, a big thing. The Supreme Court was a large portion of the Empire. Empire is run by laws. And so I think that having like a judiciary branch, more or less, of the offices would be a really cool addition here. Like maybe just right here, Supreme Law Lord, or just simply a judge, Supreme Judge, whatever it is, as an individual who helps with maybe public order and a reduction overall of a chaos taint, or something along the lines of it overall helping the populace. Maybe it helps with growth as a result of law being instilled so people feel more secure and they can have babies all over the place like rabbits. But another thing I think is that what if some of these offices unlocked as you played through your Empire campaign? A large office of the Empire, and mainly of Middenland and mainly Middenheim, is the office of R. Ulrich, which is basically like the High Supreme Priest of Ulrich. It's probably the easiest way to summarize that. But maybe this is an office that is locked until you bring Middenland into the fold as either a confederation or through war. And then you get access to an R. Ulrich, which is then again that Supreme Priest of Ulrich. And I think that'd be a very interesting and flavorful way to make the offices menu a little bit more expansive, a little bit more fun. And it goes in line with how you're going to be, I guess, quote unquote, conquering the empire as the emperor. So one big thing here is you see that we've got the Arch-Lector, right? Well, Volkmar the Grim, in specific, the Arch-Lector, dissolved a position that used to be called the Lord Protector. And the Lord Protector was essentially in control of the entirety of the Empire as far as its kind of... I guess maybe the easiest way to say it is their religious fervor or their taint, not their taint, but making sure that they are not tainted. The order of the Silver Hammer and the Inquisition has kind of taken that over, and the Lord Protector became very corrupt in time. So Volkmar the Grim dissolved it, and he established three generals, I guess you could say. They're witch hunter generals. A lord or a general of the East, the North, and the South. And the Arch-Lector himself was in charge of the West. So maybe as you are progressing in your journey and your conquest of the Empire, you unlock each one of these. Okay, well, maybe General of the North, the Witch Hunter General of the North, that would help with keeping untainted and help with public order, much in the same way that we get with the Arch-Lector, right? He gives public order and untainted. Something similar to this, but also helping out at the same time in a further magnitude. But this would only be present if you capture the North. And let's say the North, again, hypothetical here, is Midland, Nordland, and Ostland. And let's say the East is Ostermark, Talabecland, and Hochland. And the South is Stirland, Averland, and Weisenland. Like maybe that's how it's done. So you get these offices granted to you as you bring more and more of the Empire into the fold. I think that would be a very fun and really interesting and flavorful way to expand the offices tab, or the offices as a whole, maybe just a little bit more fun. Now, the last thing I kind of thought about for the offices, and this I think might be a little too highfalutin, is having 12 offices that are reserved for each one of the nations or the electoral provinces that you capture. And as you capture them, you then get access to appointing an elector count for that position, who then is granted a rune fang. Each one of the elector counts has a rune fang as a kind of sign of his office. There were more elector counts at one time with Sylvania and Solent over here. Solent's capital was Fildorf, and then Wa Gunbad, or Wa whatever the hell, wiped through it and took out Fildorf and thus Soyland and lost that rune fang. But imagine if this tab also had those elector counts and you could appoint elector counts. What I think is kind of criminal in a lot of ways is you have factions like the Tomb Kings, the Vampire Coast, which have access to these really strong, really cool and unique lord choices, right? You can use them to the research tree. You can, for the Tomb Kings, for example, you can get to one top of one branch and then you can actually choose one and he's immortal. But when you look at nations like Ulthuan, or you look at nations like Empire, you have these characters of repute. You have these nobles and these princes that lead through all of the inner and outer Ulthuan. You have all these elector counts that dot the map of the Empire, but no real true representation of these characters being anything less than just simply lord characters. So I'd love to see elector counts represented in a very strong way that gives you a little bit more flavor when you're playing as the Empire, right? Appointing an elector count is maybe it's one general that you summoned up at the very beginning of your campaign, and he's just kicking ass with you the entire time. And Nordland doesn't want us, they don't want to confederate, so you go in by force, and just as a role-playing perspective, you want to reward the general that's been with you since through thick and thin, and you want to make him the Elector Count of Nordland. I think that'd be a really awesome way to do so by making like an Elector Counts, maybe scrollable portion over here, and you can just appoint people as you need be. And depending on the Elector Count and which electoral province he's from, he gives specific bonuses. So maybe you say the Elector Count of Nuln gives you additional bonuses for gunpowder units in his army in specific, like upkeep reduction, or helps out with experience or ammunition, just stuff like that. Thematic benefits and bonuses that really befit the Elector Count of respective electoral provinces. I think that'd be a very fun way to do things. And this kind of also spirals into the research, the technology tree. I think we all can agree this is such a meager technology tree by comparison to all the other races. Even Bretonnia has got a real big, huge, robust one. Even you look at the dwarfs is massive, and it's like spanning from 1, 2, or 3 over here, and it gets this huge, big web and arc. The Empire is a little more straightforward, and I think that this was Creative Assembly's goal here. Let's make this very straightforward, make it very easy to jump into. If you guys remember when Warhammer 1 came out, Empire was not easy to play. Holy crap, it was hard. But I think that the technology tree as a whole needs to resemble something very similar to the Bretonnian technology tree. It needs more civic researches. When I say civic, I'm saying benefits towards all the many nations the Empire interacts with from a lore standpoint. I mean, Marienburg is a hub of trade, and Marienburg itself used to be the home to the Sea Elves way before it was, abandoned during the War of the Beard. It's not the War of Vengeance because we didn't really lose, fuck. But still, my point is that it'd be very interesting to see a technology tree where it's like, okay, you research this, a dwarf friend, and boom, you get an additional 40, 30, 50, whatever diplomatic relations with dwarfs. Or maybe you've got one towards High Elves, or you've got one towards Bretonnians, or even other electoral provinces within the Empire as a whole. Or even you could have one like Friends of Laurel Lorn, which is the Wood Elf. Here, we'll go to it on the map. It's kind of like right here. It's the big Wood Elf sanctuary, I guess you could say. After the War of the Beard, the Wood Elves didn't want to leave this area, and so they're here. They were not defeated. So this is a way to get a benefit towards working with Wood Elves. So anyone who's aligned with the quote-unquote forces of order, obviously you wouldn't get benefits with Norska, with Chaos, with the Greenskins. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But I think that having a technology tree that has more of those civic things is a very strong move. I mean, a lot of these things, there's nothing wrong with these technologies. I just think there needs to be more to this technology tree, because honestly, you can burst through all of these pretty quickly through an Empire campaign and be completely done with them. I mean, look at how far we are in this one. Oh, by the way, huge shout out to Weaponmaster 470. He sent me this save that has almost the entire Empire captured, so it's easier to do this video. So huge shout out to him. And an interesting idea that was proposed by Matt Ross, Overkill. He's got a channel as well. He was saying it would be interesting if there was a quest system that did a nod to the allies and allied contingents of the Empire. And I think that's a really awesome idea. The Empire as a whole is a hub for a lot of different cultures and civilizations and races. And as a whole, I think that really means that you should have access to ways to get troops that are not Empire base. And any troops that I'm going to talk about in this video, I don't think should be in multiplayer. It'd be balance breaking. Just like Sylvanian archers are not in multiplayer for vampire counts. That's what I think should be the case here. So I think that quest system should be kind of based on the human conflicts of the map. And human, of course, pertaining to Bretonnia, the Border Princes, Tilia, Nastalia, pretty much any human faction. And as they're getting pushed upon by, say, Greenskins, by Kemmler over here, Norskins up here, Chaos over here, you might get quests from, say, Kislev, or from other electoral provinces, or from Tilia Nastalia, or from the Border Princes or Bretonnia, stuff like that, where it says, hey, basically come give us aid. You think about all the instances in which the Empire has given aid to nations that were not the Empire. And as a result, the reward would be kind of something similar to the Blessed Spawnings for the Lizardmen. You get access to a unit that you would not normally get access to. Like, let's say you go and aid Bretonnia. Okay, well, now you get a unit of questing knights. because now they're, okay, well, hey, you did a good thing for Bretonnia, we're going to go on a quest for the Grail, and that's going to take us over to you and assist you in your lands. Or, hey, you go and help out down here, well, maybe you get a unit of, like, I don't know, dwarf mercenaries or something like that. Something where you can color the map a little bit more with your expansion. You're not so relegated to fighting this huge big war with other empire civilizations, which kind of leads to a lot of stalemates, right? It's not so fun when you're just fighting other empire factions and the occasional beastman one. I think that's what kind of makes the empire campaign so stagnant, is that you just don't have a lot of opposition aside from clones of your own army. It's much the same reason that a Tyrian campaign can be very tedious and very boring, because you're spending a lot of the time fighting other high elves. So I think this is a really cool way to give that cool nod to allies and allied contingents. Something I should have set out at the very beginning of this video, and I unfortunately didn't. I am working under the assumption that Kislev will be in Warhammer 3, and Chaos will be fleshed out in Warhammer 3. So with those two facts in mind, I can say that an old world update would probably be not inclusive of Kislev and or Chaos. So if that comes up in your mind, sorry for jumping back on this note, but I just looked down at my notes and said, oh fuck, I didn't think about talking about that. So again, wanted to kind of talk about that quest system, how I think it would play into an overarching role for the Empire. And again, the Empire has been the bastion or the shield for so many different nations. You think of the Great Crusades, and that's Bretonnia and Empire helping Attilia and Astalia out against Araby. You have all these instances where the Empire pushes over here into the New World, helps out all these different portions of the map, and I think that is crucial. That plays heavily into the research portion of, okay, well, I want my campaign to be very focused on the New World, so I'm going to work on diplomatic relations with the High Elves, or diplomatic relations with the Lizardmen. How the hell that'd work. But still, diplomatic relations with dwarves to help you out with the spine of Sotek down here. So I think that makes for a more colorful campaign in a way that you can approach it in a lot of different angles. But I do think one big thing, and this kind of plays into how I think the Empire campaign is very stagnant, is there has to be a bit of a map rework in my mind. They've already added places such as, where are you, little guy? Oh, there you are, Mordheim. And I think that Creative Assembly is apt to add plenty of places to this map, so I think that what needs to happen, if I don't zoom out too much, is that the Moot needs to get its own province. The Moot is an electoral province, it deserves its own. I don't think we should get halflings, don't go crazy here, but I think the Moot should have its own province, and then I think almost every single one of the electoral provinces should then have 3 settlements within it. An interesting notion that I had talked about with some of the other guys on the Discord channel was, well, what if, in order to get the Elector count, you first need to capture the province, and then there's a quest battle to unlock an elector count. That's also another very interesting idea, and I'd love to really hear how you guys would incorporate elector counts into this game. If you just think that they need to just be, okay, the Toddy, for example, in Midland, you can just confederate with Midland and you get Todd, just like you do with, say, Marathi and Nagaron. If you go ahead and confederate, then you get Marathi. Like, if you think it should be like that easy, go ahead and let me know in the comments. But I'd like to hear what you guys think about a different way to approach the elector count, quote-unquote, problem. But add the Moot as its own province. I think that's, let's get this little guy right there. Let's put the Moot as its own province. Then Stirland is going to be down some settlements, as in fact it's only going to be down to 1. So what does that mean? Well, what should we add? Well, there are quite a few really cool options here. So Stirland, I think Waldenhof would be a really good one, because Waldenhof is the old seat of Sylvania. It's the former capital of Sylvania, and it's over here in this portion of the map. And then I think another great one would be Leichenberg, which is, it's got a huge cult of Moor, and then we'll talk about that in a little bit when I talk about some of the units. But Leichenberg is, again, over on this portion of the map, so you get plenty of not occupation, but you get plenty of presence on this border with Sylvania, which you would obviously be dealing with opposition if you're playing in an Empire campaign. Furthermore, if we take a look at Averland, my bad, Averland, you already have Averheim, you have Grensot. I think that's a really great start. But even if you added Streisand, which would be great, which is about right over here. I think that this whole area is kind of a clusterfuck. If you were to take a unit and try to move it to Nuln, it's going to go over the top over here through Vertbad down into Nuln. or it would go down across over here through Weildorf, up through Weisenberg to Nuln. But I think by having another building over here that bridges that gap and makes it less of a go-around, makes for a little bit more cohesive of a map. I think that this portion of the Empire map is really just, again, a huge cluster. You've got this whole portion's impassable. Over here is deadly terrain, so it makes moving around here quite difficult, mainly for you. Dealing with opposing armies, yeah, it's nice to have those natural barriers, but once you really secure them, it's actually more of a hindrance to you and getting around your fort, your entire nation. So I think adding Streisand over here would be a really cool little touch. Now we have Nordland up in these neck of the woods. Now, as a whole, I think that this area needs to change, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But Nordland, you've got Salzenmund and you've got Dieterschaffen. And I think just like right over here, maybe even over in this direction, you could put Hagendorf, which is right around here. The map is very skewed when you look at it, like in the book. The book has it kind of like, so it's harder to look at on this map where I'm looking at it from like true north, but like it's around right in this area. Now, we talked about this a little bit ago, but Lower Lorne is right here. This is, again, the big wood elf kind of sanctuary, I guess you could say. The Wasteland has got a bunch of crap up here too, but I think that rather than kind of trying to make this huge dead zone, make Lower Lorne its own province with wood elves. Again, add something that is different from the Empire or to the old world that is not just simply Empire. Give me something else to fight, something that's more interesting, something that puts a little bit more flavor into the campaign. You've got the Drakvald Forest right over here, and put Beastmen in it. Make this an actual province in and of itself. I know Beastmen don't really own provinces, and Beastmen do start right here, but give me something here that's got a little bit like a risk-reward attached to it. So I kind of have more of a narrative to chase after. I think that a lot of the problem when it comes to the stagnation of this campaign is that, again, you do face majority of the time just your own units, more or less in different colors. So I think expanding that would be a lot of fun. Middenheim itself, I think, could even use another building line, or I'm sorry, another city over here, Diest, right over in this region, more or less. Weismund is like barely on the map. If I look, every map I've seen of Midland is like not there. So, and actually, it's supposed to be like here, if anything. It's just slightly north of Karaberg on the Altdorf-Middenheim road. In the lore where it is, so I would assume it's more over in this direction. So put another one right here, because you have this huge expanse right here that is just completely dead. And as a result, when you have big open areas, it results in a lot of like really stupid cat and mouse, Benny Hill moments with the AI, because it's forced march back and forth, they retreat, you have to ambush, you hope to catch them. I think that putting more cities forces you into more engagement with the AI, and it forces the AI to fight you on at least some sort of common ground. Chasing them in the open field is such a headache, and I always hate playing that, especially in this campaign. But again, Hochland itself could probably use... Ooh, where are you, Hochland? There you are. Could use some love. But for the most part, I mean, there's one more mining city, which is like right over here. So I think maybe Hochland actually itself could be fine with just 2 provinces. So those are some basic changes I would make to the map. The last thing here, I think that with taking over each one of these provinces, you should again get almost something like a Blessed Spawning or a Regiment of Renown that is exclusive to that portion of the map. I mean, take a look at this. You have Middenheim here. Oh, that's the wrong button, but this is the right button. And you get, boom, the Middenheim Great Temple of Ulrich. So Middenland has got a lot of amazing special units, right? You've got the Knights of the White Wolf. You have the Knights Panther over here in right there, right? Oh, right there it is. In Karaberg, you have access to Knights Panther Chapter House. You have the Swords of Ulrich, which are basically kind of like the Sons of Sigmar as far as a Regiment of Renown goes, but give more access to all of these really amazing characteristic units. Put these Regiments of Renown, quote unquote, into the game. I say again, I'm reinforcing the point. I don't think they should be multiplayer accessible, because they would probably break the balance of the game, and it's going to be a lot of fine tuning for them. But you take a look at let's go over here, Nordland. I've got notes of all the ones here, but Nordland Marines, which would be like an additional free company or a free company militia unit that could be Regiment of Renown, or even Wood Elf units, right? Since Lower Lorne's right there, you could use some sort of Wood Elf unit that is maybe you just get like some Eternal Guard or something like that. Visenland in and of itself has got quite a few. You've got Grundle's Defenders, which are halberdiers. You've got Stern Tower Marksmen, which are crossbowmen. Ironsides, which are these really awesome, like heavy-duty handgunners. When I take a look over at Reichland, I mean, Reichland's got so much going for it. I know Karberg Greatswords, that's one that everyone really wants to see, and I think it makes a lot of sense to see them in Reichland more so than Karberg. But you can also go with the Altdorf Company of Honor, which is basically like Sons of Sigmar again, but they're halberdiers rather than swords and shield. Taking a look over here, ooh, that's not what I wanted to look at. The Wasteland, that is what I wanted to look at. You have Marienburg itself, and of course, you just have the port here in Marienburg. But Marienburg, you could do like Sons of Manon, the knightly order that is dedicated to Manon, which is a very big... Manon has the largest temple at Marienburg itself. So there's a lot of really cool... Oh, Carcassonne, Southern Oblast, where are we? Eastern Sylvania would be cool, just to get like some sort of like a undead unit. But Ostermark in and of itself has got the Freeloquests of Firlangen, which are, sorry, Firelocks of Frangen, which are, again, a handgunner unit. Ostland... country, I'm sorry. I thought pressing that button would be way more conclusive and easy to talk about my point. But Ostermark has got Death's Head. I'm sorry. Death's Head are the guys that are basically like, I would think of them like immunopsychology halberdiers. They wear these really cool skull face masks in the same way that we get the Knights of Myrmidia in the Riser, the Knights of the Sun over here in Talabheim. I mean, Talabheim already has its own units with, where are you? There you are. The Blazing Sun chapter house, right? You get the Knights of the Blazing Sun. They're all there. It's awesome. It's perfect. I think that's exactly what I want to see. Is give me a unit that is exclusive to each one of these electoral provinces. I mean, talking about, I think the only one we haven't talked about is Stirland. And Stirland, I think, would be really cool because Stirland has a large presence of the Cult of Mor, and the Cult of Mor's biggest temples are in Tilia and Astalia. They're not up in the Empire, but there's a pretty large one in Stirland. So maybe this gives you access to the Knights of Mor in Stirland, or the Deathjacks, which are a Regiment of Renown version of the Hunters. This would again give you access to the Hunters, which are basically just, think of, I guess if I wanted to put them to Total War Warhammer, just bow and arrow, stock, Vanguard type units, like Way Watchers, but like a cheap discount version of them. But again, I think there's so many options for all these great, amazing units for Empire that are just not in the game, and I think that an Empire rework has to include that, because it is a bit of the flavor, and it's all the gooey center of the Empire, all these flavorful units. I mean, that book of the units of the uniforms and heraldry of the Empire is huge, because it goes into each and every one of these individual units that dot this map. So hopefully you enjoyed this video here today where we talk about the Empire, and I love to hear some of your suggestions on things you'd love to see that have changed, or I'm sorry, that should change to the Empire. Things that would make it a more fun campaign, or something that's at least more in line with the huge bar that has been raised in Total War Warhammer 2 DLC for each subsequent one. In our next couple of videos, we'll be doing one for the Wood Elves, one for the Beastmen, and one for the Greenskins, and we'll do the same thing. We'll just talk about some mechanics, purely speculative, purely conjecture, me just kind of shooting from the hip here. Basically, I write notes down and look at them and go, yeah, I'm going to talk about that. That's actually not that bad of an idea. Well, you thought of it in the shower or pooping, but whatever. Still, my point is, I think that some of these ideas would be really great. I think some of them are a little over the top, and I think some are just outright bad, but I want you guys to get in that at least mindset of what I'm thinking for what needs to happen to the Empire. Since we don't know what is going to be the old world race that gets revamped, if the new DLC comes out and it's not the Empire, well, this video can still be relevant, and we'll talk about whatever they decide to do as the next one, and hopefully do that in a timely manner. But I'll probably be cranking these videos out pretty quickly so that we find out in line with whatever the DLC announcement is, and then from there, we can just say, okay, well, let's just tack this on to the next one down the road, so on and so. But as always, guys, thank you so much for joining me here today. As always, have a good one, and take care.